Welcome to stage 17 of Misspoke, a cycling podcast going out during the coronavirus pandemic, although of course you can listen to it after the pandemic is over. It's a collection of cycling bits, opinions, ideas, stories, rants, occasionally non-cycling related bits and pieces as well, and I hope you find something that you can enjoy. I'm going to start stage 17 with a short story, and this is called Dolls' Houses. There were 5 of them cycling through Kent at the weekend, 4 men and a woman, she the wife of one of the men. The weather cold and misty, a sharp wind from the sea, heavy dark clouds, a fine drizzle buffeting their faces as they turned into the wind huddled against the gusts. They'd left Whitstable just after 10 a.m, standing by the lobster shack and arguing about the best route to take, some favouring the coastal path, others a route to Ramsgate, others fancying a short loop to Canterbury and back before the threatened rain. They set off finally, Nigel leading, fed up with the arguing and pushing on to Herne Bay, there hoping for coffee and a swift turnaround. Keith and Andrew favoured the Ramsgate option, but the others didn't fancy such a long ride. Herne Bay was poor and cold, empty shops and boarded-up cafes, little amusement in the amusement arcade, the people huddled against the wind. The little group pushed on through, doughty Nigel setting the pace, his nose to the wind, his back to the sea. Near a culver they paused to study the map, weak eyes hooded against the light. "This way," said Martin. "No, this," said Peter. "No, this," said Nigel, pushing off down the road. They settled in behind, grateful for his bulwark against the breeze. The A28 to Margate was a brutal road, pitted and potholed, scarred and acneyed with no shelter and the cars rushing past on shopping trips or off to see the in-laws or the grandparents, duty calling. Martin spotted a sign to Grove Ferry half a mile down the road and off the busy highway. "Let's go and look," he said, as they huddled in a lay-by, their weak elders' eyes struggling to read Google Maps on their shaky phone screens. "The sign says ferry trips. Let's check it out." They turned off the road, eager to escape the rushing traffic. It was quieter here, and the road eased away down a hill through arching trees. "Oh no, not a hill," said Nigel, who hated hills. "If I go down, I'll have to come back up." "Let's just see," said Keith. "It's not far." Nigel grunted. They drifted down the slope, not as fearsome as Nigel had feared, and rolled over a level crossing just before the gates rumbled down and then onto a bridge over a fast-flowing river. "No stopping on bridge," said a sign, so they rolled to a stop in the middle of the bridge. The water flowed strongly beneath them. Some ramshackle boats could be seen huddled against the banks. A man in a speedboat rushed from round the bend. The damp tables and benches of a riverside pub were visible beneath the green branches of the trees that leaned over and kissed the current. There was no one else around. Martin took out his phone and took some pictures. Nigel rested astride his crossbar. Mary removed her rain jacket from her saddlebag and shrugged it on. Andrew and Keith leaned on the railings and watched the fast-flowing water. Andrew checked the map again. "We can continue on this road," he said. "We can do a loop through Pluck's Gutter, and it will bring us back to the A28, a bit nearer to Margate." "Are there more hills?" asked Nigel, sourly. "I can't tell," said Andrew. "But if we go back, we'll have to climb back up to the A28. This way looks better." "Let's get it over with," said Nigel. Keith was the strongest cyclist of the group, and he set off eagerly up the road. It was more sheltered here, and there were few cars. They moved along in single file. "I want to see Pluck's Gutter," said Andrew. "I'm intrigued." He pushed on, upping the pace. Nigel and Mary fell further behind. The landscape was quite flat, with small, low, rolling hills, occasional houses half hidden behind high hedgerows or picket fences. Many buildings appeared derelict. Half-dismembered cars littered the unkempt driveways. The clucking of free-range chickens could be heard. Barking dogs broke the silence. Andrew wanted a photo of Pluck's Gutter, but there was nothing to see. Just a pub and a few houses. No explanation for its strange name. They felt alone in this bleak land, unsure of their route or destination, while the few cars that passed knew their role on the road. "I call this dueling banjos country," said Andrew. "You've all seen Deliverance?" He wasn't sure they had. "Stay close together," he continued. "You never know what lurks in this land." They eased round a bend and approached a small hill. To their right was a clutch of tumble-down buildings, and a loose collection of old tables and chairs could be seen. An old faded sign was half hidden in the bushes. "Hot and cold food served all day." "What about here?" said Martin. "It's time for tea." "Are you mad?" said Andrew. "Look at it. It doesn't even look open." "I need tea," said Nigel. "Any port in a storm." "I'll go and see," said Keith. "Be careful," said Andrew. "If you don't come back, we're getting out of here. I can just imagine, one by one, we disappear in there, never to be seen again." "Hurry up," said Nigel. "I need tea." Keith wheeled his bicycle onto the gravel drive and through a wooden archway towards a darkened doorway. An old BMW was parked at the front, but there was no other sign of life. The others waited by the side of the road, ready to cycle away at the first sign of trouble. Keith disappeared into the doorway. Time passed. Silence broken by the gusts of wind and Nigel's laboured breathing. There was no traffic and no one around, and no birds flew overhead. The four were alone in this strange land amongst strangers who couldn't be seen. Keith emerged. "It's open," he said. "We can get tea." "Thank God," said Nigel. "I think you're mad," said Andrew. They dismounted and wheeled their bikes into the front yard and leaned them against the rusted seats and broken flower pots. There was a covered area with some broken toys, some upturned toy cars, an old tennis racket, tennis balls, discarded dolls, bits of string, crumbling wooden benches, chipped metal tables. There was a sign on the wall: "Unattended children will be sold as slaves." "It's not a joke," said Andrew. They stepped into a darkened room, faint light seeping through a curtain. A couple of tables with unmatching chairs, rows of wooden shelves with pots of honey and homemade jam, old photographs and prints on the walls, a makeshift counter with cakes beneath glass lids, an old-fashioned cash register. A woman emerged from a curtained doorway, mid-50s, short greying hair, dark trousers and a shapeless jumper, suspicious eyes. She stood behind the counter, eyeing the cyclists in their lycra and helmets, their eyes hidden behind opaque glasses. Behind her on the wall, menu items were scrawled on blackboard panels. Sandwiches, cream teas, toasties, hot and cold drinks. "Afternoon," said Mary. "I'd like a latte, please." "What sandwich fillings do you have?" said Keith, acting as if he was at the Ritz. The woman gave him a long, slow look, trying to judge if he was joking. She jerked a thumb behind her head. "It's on the menu," she said, no smile in her voice. "Sorry," said Keith. "Cheese on toast for me and a cup of tea," said Nigel. "And me," said Andrew, and Keith, and Mary together, fearful of causing a scene. "Bacon sandwich, please," said Martin. Andrew said, "Excuse me, do you have a toilet?" She looked at him. "Follow me," she said. "You'll never find it otherwise." Andrew looked at the others for reassurance and then followed her. They passed back out of the room, across a small courtyard, past a wooden shack with a sign on the door: "Children's Museum, a collection of old and interesting items." Through another door and into a dark room filled with thousands of items of doll's house furniture. Faint light came through the open door and shone a faint glow on the many items. They continued on and emerged out of the back of the building into a jumbled farmyard. Pigsties and chicken runs, a series of cages filled with small chattering birds, clucking turkeys, puffy rabbits. A dog was barking somewhere but couldn't be seen. She pointed down some steps to a shed in the far corner of the yard. "The black door," she said, and turned and walked away. Andrew moved gingerly past the caged birds and the suspicious turkeys. He tried the black door, but it didn't move. He tried again, but there was no movement. There was an eerie silence in the yard and no sign of another human being. The invisible dog had disappeared. He crept back, past the caged birds, back up the steps, past the doll's house furniture, through the gloom, outside and back into the other room. He stuck his head around the curtain where the woman stood by a cooker. "I think it's locked," he said. "Have you got a key?" She looked up. "Probably someone in it," she said slowly. Andrew thanked her and wandered back. When he reached the black door, it was partly open. There was an old immobile mobile home wedged sideways on, its curtains drawn. The door was closing, and Andrew could just see an old man disappearing inside. There were 2 baths behind the black door, which looked like they saw little use, and a toilet. Andrew locked the door behind him, and the light faded. On his way back, he paused in the doll's house room. Every available surface was covered with miniature items of furniture or household objects. Chairs, tables, sofas, beds, lampstands, coal scuttles, bunches of artificial flowers, magazine racks, desks, lampshades, carved in wood, moulded in plastic, shaped from wire and meticulously painted. Everything was for sale. In the centre of the room, surrounded on all sides by tables piled high with materials, was the workstation for whoever made all of this stuff. It was quiet in the room, and eerie, the air heavy with a sense of loss. Who was all this for? Andrew hurried back, his cycle cleats clicking on the stone floor. From the kitchen came the most glorious smell of frying bacon, rich and pungent, an old-fashioned smell of real meat, not the vacuum-packed, pale, waterlogged slivers found in supermarket packets. "I remember real bacon," said Nigel. "It had rind and fat. You never see bacon rind now. And bristly tufts of hair," said Andrew, "like an elderly woman." They sat round the rough table amidst the old toys and the sizzling bacon smell. The woman brought out a tray with cups, a big jug of milk and an enormous teapot. "I'll be mother," said Nigel. "I like a pot of tea. I always make myself a pot of tea for breakfast. And porridge. I like porridge." "You've got time," said Martin. "You're retired." Next came their cheese on toast and Martin's bacon sandwich, thick, meaty slabs and drooling fat oozing out from the sides of the bread. The woman stood and watched them, leaning on the counter. "May we know your name?" said Nigel. "Wendy." "Have you been here long?" 1980 we moved here," she said. "Place needs doing up now." "We like it," said Mary. "Aye," said Wendy. Nigel asked for a slab of fruit cake and sat there munching. "Tasty cake," he said. "Can you show me where the toilet is?" Mary asked Andrew. Wendy had retreated to the kitchen. "Follow me," he said. "You'll never find it otherwise. Better take a ball of string with you." He led her through the doll's house room and out to the yard and pointed to the white building with the black door. "Do you want me to wait for you?" he said. "I think I'll be okay," said Mary. There was another room off the main room, full of dolls' houses in various styles and states of repair. It was gloomy. Andrew peered through the tiny windows into the detailed interiors. He looked round the back of one of the houses. There was a small doll's garden, a swing, a slide, a little white dog, a seesaw, a traditional roundabout, some artificial grass, 2 tiny white crosses planted in the artificial ground. Andrew sensed someone nearby and whirled around. An elderly man was standing there. He had emerged from somewhere, silent, noiseless, like an usher. He was dressed all in black, with thinning grey hair, a thin face, pale, watery eyes, long, bony fingers. His lips were dry and crusted, but his black shoes were shiny and polished. "What are you doing here?" he said. His voice was sharp and unfriendly, and he leaned in close to Andrew. "What are you looking at?" "I'm sorry," said Andrew. "I didn't mean to intrude. The dolls' houses, they're exquisite, perfect in every detail. It's like they're real." "They are real," said the man. "Everything is real. Everything, just as it happened." Andrew looked at him. There were tears in the man's eyes. Andrew followed his gaze to the 2 tiny white crosses. "Can I ask?" he said, and his voice trailed off. "What?" said the man. "Ask what?" "The 2 crosses," said Andrew. "There's a reason, isn't there?" "There's always a reason," said the man. "There's always a reason. Not always reason, but there's always a reason. Do you know your Hemingway?" "Wayne Hemingway?" said Andrew. The designer? I've heard of him. Not Wayne. Ernest. Ernest Hemingway, the writer. The Old Man and the Sea, remember? The Sun Also Rises. Sorry, said Andrew. Yes, I've heard of him, but I've not read anything by him. You should, said the man. You should. He moved past Andrew and reached through an open window of the doll's house and straightened some items of furniture. He blew gently on the garden furniture, which had collected some dust. I'm William, he said. Andrew. Pleased to meet you. Hemingway wrote a lot of short stories. You should read some. Big Two-Hearted River, The Killers. He also wrote the finest short story ever. It's only 6 words. 6 words? Said Andrew. How can you write a short story in 6 words? Try it, said William. What was it? Said Andrew. The story. For sale. Baby shoes. Never worn. That's beautiful, said Andrew. Maybe, said William. Not if it happens twice. I'm sorry, said Andrew. I'm so sorry. Thank you, said William. It doesn't go away, you know. It never goes away. I make the dolls' houses. Wendy makes the tea. We get by. He walked over to the workbench and sat down. He picked up some tools and started whittling at a piece of wood. We get by, he said again. You learn to. Andrew went back to find the others. They each paid separately for their food and their drinks, mounted their bicycles and rode away, over the crunching gravel, into the wind, along the coastal path to Whitstable, rushing to get back before the rain came. Although this podcast is mostly about cycling culture, it's also about cycling and culture. So now something non-cycling related, and this is a poem, one of my favourite poems, and it's by Yeats, William Butler Yeats, and it's called When You Are Old. When you are old and grey and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. And now we continue with the next chapter from The Monument, a novella about the Liege sportive. And we've reached chapter 14, and apologies, but it starts with a bit of bad language. Shit, said Clovis. Did you lock them? Said Eric. What do you mean, did I lock them? Did you lock them? It's your bike too. It's your car. Us arguing isn't helping. What do? Do we go to the police? Too risky. Could lead to too many awkward questions. I loved that trek. I loved my giant. You're taking this a bit too relaxed, if you ask me. I didn't ask you. It's an expression. Was this part of the plan that you cooked up with the flower pot men? Stop calling them that. The flower pot men were Bill and Ben. These are Bill and Bob. And I didn't cook up any plan, as you call it. Was it Chrissy and Jordan, then? Our 2 hot cycling hookers with the hots for 2 old men? God, there's no fool like an old fool. Unless it's 2 old fools, said Eric. Let's get out of here. They got into the stonking red Mazda and Clovis connected his iPhone to Apple CarPlay. They drove off. They hadn't travelled more than a mile before the phone rang. The phone was connected hands-free, so Clovis pressed the button on the steering wheel, and Bob's voice came booming over the 12-speaker Bose sound system. What have you 2 fucking clowns done with my fucking bikes? Hi, Bob, said Eric hesitantly. Well? I think they've been stolen, said Eric. Stolen by who? Whom? Said Eric. Bad guys, I suppose, or bad girls. Don't fuck with me. What do you mean, bad girls? They work for you, don't they? Said Clovis. Who? Smart guy. Jordan and Chrissy. Aren't they part of your gang? We're not a gang. Who's Jordan and Chrissy? Never heard of them. Whoa, said Clovis. Oh, shit. What do you mean? What are you talking about? We met these girls, women, last night, said Eric. They were nice to us, if you know what I mean. We stayed the night with them, at their place. You two? Pulled a couple of crackers? I don't believe it. What were they, hookers? And where are they now? We don't know. You don't know? He doesn't know. Why not? We woke up this morning and they were gone. We thought they were part of your lot, there to keep an eye on us and get us out of the house while you did your business. We didn't do our business, said Bob. Why not? Said Clovis. That is none of your fucking business. Sorry, said Clovis. What happens now? Said Eric. We'll be in touch, said Bob, and hung up. Don't leave town. Why not? It's an expression, you idiot. Clovis was on the motorway where it was raining. The automatic wipers swished lazily across the windscreen. It was warm in the car and comfortable, and he switched the music on and settled back in his leather seat. Are we in trouble? He said. I don't know, said Eric. I think we might be. Shit. What will I tell my wife? About the giant? Or about Jordan? Or about being a smuggler? Or not? Or about upsetting the flower pot men, as you call them? About all of it, said Clovis. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. You won't be. It's an expression, said Eric. And continue with my autobiographical memoir entitled My Life in Bikes, and I've reached 2014 and a Boardman 9.8. I could reuse the components from the Canyon Ultimate, and so I looked around for a frame. I found a Boardman 9.8 on eBay and won the bid. I picked it up from the seller in Kingston. He told me that he'd bought it for a triathlon event and had only ridden it the once. Yeah, I bet. Anyway, it looked undamaged and in good condition. It was designed for Shimano Di2 electronic gearing and came with a battery pack and holder mounted on the non-drive side chainstay. It was light and black and yellow, very fetching. I took it to the bike shop that still had the useless Ultimate and asked them to transfer the components. But I wanted Di2, so I ordered the extra bits I needed and had it built up into a very fine bike indeed. Shortly after it was completed, I went to Normandy to ride the Duo Normand, a 2-up time trial event, and the only time trial event I now entered. On the Saturday, the other club members and I rode the course. I was halfway round when the gears ceased to work. It's the battery, said Kevin. Have you got the charger? No, I said. Why not? Said Kevin. Don't ask awkward questions, I said. It was a virtually new bike. Surely the battery was fully charged. No. Di2 was relatively new then, and no one else in the club was using it, so no one had a battery charger. We knew there was a bike shop halfway between the course in Marigny and the place we were staying, so we called in on the way. My French was not good, but luckily I managed to explain the problem. Non, monsieur, said the mechanic. I have a battery charger, but it belongs to the shop. I don't have one to sell. Oh. Monsieur, he said, leave your battery here, and we will charge it up, and you can pick it up in the morning. 3 cheers for the French. The next morning, Sunday, we drove to the shop. It was shut, with no signs of life, and there was no phone number. We waited around to see if anyone turned up to open up, but they didn't, and time was marching on. Bastard French. Don't trust them. There was nothing to do but continue to the event which was due to start. We reached the town, and I decided to ride into the town square to see if anyone might have a spare battery. And there was a marquee from the shop with my mechanic and my battery. Merci beaucoup. 3 cheers for the French. The Boardman was a fine bike with a low front end, so it was already aerodynamic. And when I put new Zip 303 front, 404 rear wheels on it, it went like the clappers. Canyon in-flight, 2014. But I still had money left over, so I bought another Canyon, an in-flight this time, an aluminium cyclocross bike. I had no real intention of entering cyclocross events, but it seemed like a good choice for a winter bike. Did I still have the Planet X winter bike? Yes, but the Canyon was different. It was black for a start, with disc brakes, the first time I'd used them, and a Shimano Ultegra group set. It was time to rationalise. I went back to the bike shop to see if they had any advice on the best place to sell the Van Nicholas. The bike might last forever, but not in my possession. The shop owner decided he liked it for himself and made me a fair offer. Done. Now I had the Cervelo, Roberts, Planet X Winter, Boardman and the Canyon in-flight. One out, one in. It was obviously time for another Canyon. I'm going to finish stage 17 with a cycling monologue. Coming to the end of these cycling monologues now, I'm going to have to try and think of some more cycling stereotypes to produce monologues about anyway. This one is called the Ebay Stalker. So anyway, I just got these wheels on eBay. They're like zips. Well, I mean, they're not real zips, but just as good. Guess how much? Go on, guess. You're wrong. Way wrong. I got them off some bloke who'd only used them a couple of times. Not a mark on them. Well, hardly anyway. That's the thing about eBay. If you know what you're looking for, you can get some great stuff. I got this saddle off eBay. I was really lucky. I only paid £6 for it. It's hardly been used, and I've sold loads of stuff too. I had these speed play pedals which I sold. They were shit. I got £60 for them plus postage. But don't use PayPal. You pay a fortune in fees, some people say. It's all crap and been nicked, but it's not true. I got these shorts off eBay. Castelli they are. Well, they're not real Castelli, obviously. They've only been worn a couple of times, the bloke said. Only £20 was all. Look, feel that fabric. No, go on, feel it. I sold my old Dolan TT frame. Shit it was. Had a crack in it. But this bloke never noticed. I got £300 for it. I tell you, there's some right mugs on eBay. My cask helmet, yeah, I got that off eBay. Some bloke never raced or rallied. I mean, it's not a real cask, obviously. There's a lot of people buy gear and they don't use it and they sell it on eBay, you know. One man's crap is another man's bargain and all that. I got these tyres, Contis they are, hardly used. Only £10, never had a puncture. Well, only a couple, but you expect that. I have this app, it's called eBay Sniper. It's brilliant, it does the bidding for you, it's magic. I always use that. I bid for some Rafa shoes, but I just lost out. I'm going to sell my Colnago next. It's got full Ultegra and everything except for the chain and the brakes and the rear derailleur, obviously. You can sell anything on eBay. I used to use bike radar, but I got fed up. Of course, I offered it to the club first on the forum. I'm after some TD bars. Know anyone who's selling any? Because eBay is rubbish. You just get ripped off and it's all just adverts and crap from China. I'm never going to do that again. I tried one of those cycle jumble things. It was great. I got a tandem frame. Now all I need are the rest of the bits, group set and stuff, and I can get it built up. Do you know anyone who could build it up for me cheap? I suppose I could try eBay. You've been listening to stage 17 of Misspoke, a cycling podcast during the coronavirus pandemic. Hope you've enjoyed it and listen out for stage 18 wherever you get your podcasts.